Hello. Hi. Are you ready for your interview? Yes, I am ready. Great. Hello, welcome to our Deaf Kiwi Diversity Series. My name is Nadia. And what's your name? My name is Becky. I have heard a lot about you. You are a digital designer, right? Yes, I am a digital designer. So whereabouts did you make a start in the digital designing space? Yes, well, I was born in Hong Kong, as you know. And when I was little and growing up, my mum worked as a car cleaner. And she would work in like a building that had parked cars there. And when my mum was working there one day, she noticed a stack of books. And she thought, what's that? So she went over and picked them up, and she thought, I'll take them home to my children because I've got 3 sisters as well. So she brought them home, and we were like, what's that? And we had a look through, and they were comic books. Yeah, so we were like, what is it? And we were looking through them, and we had never seen them before growing up because my mum couldn't afford to buy them. They were an expensive book at that time, the comics. And so we were looking through them, and then one day my sister, who's hearing, she thought she'd grab a pencil and have a go at copying the illustrations in the book. There was an empty margin there on the page, and so she thought she'd have a go at copying what she could see. Like she copied the faces, anime, that style of illustration. So she tried to copy what she was seeing in terms of those anime pictures. And I picked up what she'd done, and she was really good. She could do it. I thought, wow, maybe I could also do it. So I picked up some paper, and I also had a go. And actually, I wasn't too bad. I think I have a bit of an artist in me. And so, I was having a go at drawing. And then sometimes if I didn't have anything to do, I thought I'd just challenge myself. And I thought, my sister could do it. Other people could do it. Maybe I could also do it, And so I'd have a go. And over time, I just did that. So I think in Hong Kong, it's year 5. So it was really year 12. So at that time, we were soon graduating. So we had a big exam coming up. So that meant that it wasn't only the deaf students, it was hearing students as well. Everyone who was in that year 12 level had to sit this exam. So that was school. Yeah, and they had a look at, we'd count up the points, and it was about ranking the positions. And so I took art. And so that was one of the subjects I chose, and also pottery as well. And I did have other subjects as well, like English, maths. Yeah, so I'd chosen art, and I'd chosen to do some big A1 size pictures. So A1's the biggest one, right? Yeah, really the biggest. Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, so A2 times 2. So you have them together and it creates an A1. So I decided to use that size for my drawings, which was quite unique. I chose to use sandpaper. So not normal paper. I use like sandpaper, with the texture on it, to really try and have that kind of unique texture. So that's what I chose to try and be creative. I needed something really unique. So my teacher, he was a deaf teacher, and he said, impossible to do that. And I said, no, I want to give it a go. Because if you think of an A4, I said, look, I've got an idea. So I got those, that sandpaper, and I lined them all up to create an A1 size. Yeah. And then I took a oil pencil, like a colour one, and I drew these features, and it was actually a monster the theme was talking about like when you open the door and the monster, what do they do? So, like get a fright or whatever, or, drawing the monster in the way that they would appear in that situation. So I did that and then submitted them. And so that was kind of the exam. And so on that day that the results were coming out, the deaf teacher, I arrived and he was there. I was ready to kind of have a look at what my points were. But before I'd even done that, the teacher came in and he said, wow, he said, pa, which means pa, like pa. So before, at the deaf school, there was like, A, B, C's, because it was quite hard to get an A at that time, being deaf, but I actually got an A and that's what he meant by that. So it was like a real surprise for me. I was like, I can achieve at the same level as hearing people, So that was like, wow, I can do this at that level. And so I realized that, yep, I have that skill inside me. So that was like a start. And so I graduated and then went to study at kind of polytech level. I did art, computer design, and I was learning, but it was actually really difficult because there were no interpreters at that time. So a lot went over my head. But, I would watch what we needed to do, and it was really difficult. And, if I'd been a hearing person, it would have been a lot easier. But all of this information, I wasn't able to take it in. But I still was able to pick up from things around me and other people, and it wasn't 100%. But like it was really hard to get into like, a hearing kind of level job because, obviously there's the need to communicate, right? Yeah, but you had to find other ways to achieve, right? Yeah, so luckily there was a deaf friend that I had who was already working as a designer, but she needed to leave her job, and so they were looking for a replacement. So the company were accepting of people with disabilities. So she asked me and she said, oh, look, I know that you've got some skills and artistic talent. And at that time, they were like designing kind of advertisement brochures to hand out on the street to try and entice people to buy things. So that's what they were designing. And I thought I could give that a go. So I did, and I was actually quite nervous when I arrived. It was like, oh, how does this program work? And, all the design software. And, when I started, of course, I was quite rusty, but over time I did improve. And so that's how, I thought that's how you design at that professional level. Very different to school days, So you had that hands-on experience at school, hadn't you? Yes, I had that hands-on. So this is the first time you were actually kind of in there in the digital world. Yeah, and the technology and learning how it all worked. But, there was a lot to learn, in terms of the skills. Actually practically doing it was the first time I'd had that situation in terms of the advertising job. So I was quite nervous. But I did develop in my skills and in Hong Kong and culture, I did a lot of overtime. Sometimes I'd stay till midnight. Yeah, like start at 9 o'clock in the morning and work all the way through till then. So late nights. But it was a good experience and I was able to learn. Can I ask, you mentioned about your 3 sisters, right? So your family are deaf, hearing? Well, I have 3 sisters. My oldest sister is deaf, second is hearing, third is deaf, and then me, deaf, number 4. So just that one hearing sister, and my mum and dad are hearing. So luckily I had sisters that I could chat to. I wasn't just kind of isolated. So you had some natural signing for communication, did you, growing up? Yeah, back in the day, we didn't have that access to sign language or it was banned. So my mum and sister believed that oral communication was the way to go because it would secure us a job for the future, fitting in with hearing people. And if we weren't able to lip read, then what jobs could we get in the future? So they were really keen for us to do that. But it was so hard. I couldn't do it. I tried sometimes to practice, and I could just kind of on a word level do that, but nothing very fluent. And so my sisters and I would just kind of sign away and use all these facial expressions, and it was a very different experience and very difficult trying to be oral. Yeah, so a bit of switching between those two modes. Yeah, so my hearing sister used to say, "You look really ugly when you're signing, with all those facial expressions." And I was like, "Oh, am I doing too much of this?" I'd ask my sisters. I was like, "I don't know." It was just so natural for us to communicate in that way with expression. But my hearing sister thought it looked awful. Yeah. So you moved to New Zealand. When was that? 2013. You moved here just for a holiday or, well, not really moved actually. I came here for a working holiday on a visa. Because at that time, like before 2013, I think it was more 2006 actually, I was just like the working holiday visas were starting, and my sister, my hearing sister, she had, hearing people always hear information faster than deaf people do. And she had heard about this working holiday visa, meaning that she was able to go anywhere to any country that would accept you. So you needed to be between the ages of 18 and 30, and then you could go to those countries. Some allowed 1 year, some allowed 2 years. And so she realized that you could go and get some work experience and that you were allowed to work on this working holiday visa. And at the same time, you could travel and learn about the culture and the language and things like that. So she was really keen. So my sister, she was the first one to go over, and she went to Australia. So she had that experience, and it really did change her. Because previous to that, remember I told you about my sister saying that signing was ugly? Well, she did have that time over in Australia, and then when she'd finished her year, she came back over, and she was a changed person because she came to me and she apologised. She said, "I'm so sorry that I never tried to learn sign language with you." Really? Wow, from that time in Australia. Yeah, so during that time, somebody else from overseas, she was having a conversation with them, and they'd asked her about her family, and she said that she had 3 deaf sisters. And yeah, and this person was saying, "Wow, that means you must know some sign language. Give me some sign language. I want to learn some." And she was just kind of stumped because she didn't know any at all. We had home signs that she knew, but not actually Hong Kong Sign Language. And so that was hugely impacting for her. And she, kind of looked at herself and she thought, "I've got deaf family members, but I've never gone out of my way to learn the language." So she was impacted by that conversation, and she came back and she learnt sign language. And now we can communicate really well. Previously, we didn't talk about anything of depth. It was kind of, nothing with emotions or anything of depth, how to solve things. But now we can really talk at that level. And so I'm really grateful for that experience that she had in Australia, because it really did open up her mind. So she went, and then my other sister as well. Well, everyone went travelling. Yeah, and then my other sister too. She ended up going to Australia, and then it was my turn. Wow, really? Yes. So you were keen? Yes, but my mum didn't want me to, because being the last one, I guess I was a bit naughty back then. You were the baby, weren't you? Well, yeah, I guess, at that time she was a bit suspicious of whether I could really do it and go independently. And I was like, "Don't worry, I will mature." And my mum was, she became accepting of it, but she didn't really want to let me go. And I said, "I can do this, Mum. I can. I said, "If you don't let me, then I'll regret it. I can't go back in time." And so my mum was like, "Okay." It was hard to let me go, but she did. And I tried to apply. I applied to Australia, but because my friend, she was going to Australia, and I said, "Yes, I'll come along." So applied for that working holiday visa and had to pay everything. And so we did that. But unfortunately, she had sickness in her family, which prevented her from going. So I needed to drop it. But one of my friends said to me, look, you still need to go. You need to go. Because I was 29, meaning, the cutoff was 30. And so I really needed to get it done. And so she said, look, you should just go. If you don't, then you'll regret it, forever. So I thought, okay, go by myself then. Wow. I was like, okay, I can do this. So I went to apply again, but I was prevented from doing so because when I had originally applied to go to Australia, I'd never let them know that the trip was cancelled. And so it was kind of in their system, it was like it was still open or it had already been and gone, as if I'd already spent my time over there, even though I hadn't. So I couldn't go to Australia. So I was having a look at my options and I thought, oh, I could go to New Zealand. What's wrong? Why did you never think of New Zealand in the first place? I know. I just knew that New Zealand was a really small country with, sheep. And I just thought it was a land full of sheep all over the place. That's what I envisaged, honestly. That's kind of what people sometimes think. They just, get a bit confused about Australia and New Zealand. So I touched down, with my backpack on, and wow, that was a really big journey for you, coming over from Hong Kong to this tiny, small little country. But now you're proud of New Zealand, right? You feel that pride as a New Zealander? Yes, I do. I'm a citizen. And I did not expect this. Really, really did not expect this. I wasn't planning to actually move here. I thought I'd go back to Hong Kong, but no plans change. So in New Zealand, what did you first encounter? At that time that I came, it was June, so it was winter. It was the wrong time, I know, but it was only for a year, so I thought it was probably better to kind of start around that time and then finish, obviously, at the same time and head back. So I knew that it would be quite difficult to find a job, like, at that time of the year, like on a farm or whatever it might be. So, and I wanted to learn about the life. So I touched down, and actually it was only 4 days after I arrived that I got a job. Seriously, no joking. Wow. Yeah. So I arrived, and the first day I looked around. The second day I madly applied and looked for work online, and I thought I can just do whatever. I didn't actually care what it was. And I saw this grape advertisement. And the comments were saying, no, don't do it. It's hard work. It's outside. It's cold. It's wet. There's ice. You get sore hands. And I was reading the comments and I thought, no, I'm just going to ignore them. It's a job. I don't like just sitting there doing nothing. So I thought, I'm going to apply. So, yeah, there was a group of the Chinese people, and it was down in Blenheim. So I joined the group and I worked, and it was really, really tough. The boss there was an Indian person and, didn't want to pay tax. And I was none the wiser, never asked me about tax, and I didn't know about it. And so money was just transferred into my bank account, and I just thought this was normal, actually. And then he said, oh, sorry, there's not a job now. And yeah, so anyway, the next day, it was really early in the morning. I think it was 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, I arrived and had said, no, sorry, there's no work. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And also, I was in a backpackers, but I was stupidly only had bought this zip-up sleeping bag, but it was really a summer weight sleeping bag because I hadn't known. I was absolutely freezing. So nothing was provided there, or no pillows were even provided, and I was just shivering away. I just wrapped up some clothes and used them as a pillow, and I had socks on, and, whatever I had available, I put on to try and keep me warm. It was absolutely awful. I was like, oh, I don't want to have to get out to go to the toilet. And when I had to, I'd open the door and I'd get this cold breeze come at me, and I'd go to the toilet and had to get myself back. But, it was a really cheap backpackers, and, it wasn't the greatest experience. But anyway, I gave that in, and luckily, like in Blenheim, I bumped into somebody called Wayne, and it's a bit of a long story, but I'll keep it short. So I bumped into Wayne, who was a guide around Blenheim, and he said, do you know that we've got sign language classes? And I said, oh, I would like to be involved in that. Who is the tutor? And I want to go along and see what this is about. So he said, come along. And so to this NZSL class, but the tutor was actually oral. So for example, she'd say, what's the sign for red? Like this. What's the sign for yellow? Yeah, honestly, totally oral. I was like, oh no, because I worked in Hong Kong and I saw what it was like for deaf people teaching, and I thought, wow, okay. Anyway, the students were really intrigued at seeing me there as a deaf person, signing, and I couldn't lip read everything. And, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't actually know New Zealand Sign Language. But I tried to kind of, make my way through. And so the students were learning NZSL, and one person was working actually as a grape yard manager, which was, fortuitous. So that's what he said. I said, where do you work in? He was like, oh, I work on this farm as a manager. And I was like, whoa, really? Well, at the moment, I'm not in full-time employment. It was more kind of like a casual arrangement. And I said, I have availability. And, he didn't have any availability for a while, but then some came along. And so I ended up getting a job with him for 8 months. But previous to that, I'd kind of been working, wrapping the vines around the grapevine, how it comes up and then it kind of branches off in both directions. So the vine branches off, and when there's no grapes left on the vine, you prune off the branches so that there are just 4 remaining, and then you tie the remaining vines around the wire fences that are there. And so you have to do this with your hands and kind of twist it around the wire, because the way that the vines go, it means that when the summertime comes, the fruit will easily grow. And if you don't tie them, then it all gets a bit twisted together, and that doesn't allow growth in the same way. And it also makes it harder to prune. And so that was the purpose for doing this, for the future growth of the fruit in those directions. But it was hard work having to grab the vine and twist it, like the way you had to hold the base of it and then twist the rest of the vine over the wires. Yeah. So it was, I didn't know what to do at first, but I eventually got used to it and I could do it in the end. But it was a funny story because I was doing this and, 4-leaf clovers? Those little clovers, the green, So you might see a lot of them do have 4 leaves. Anyway, I was looking down one day and I could remember, there's a good luck thing. And I picked it up and it had 5 leaves. It was a really big one. This 5-leaf clover, and my eyes opened wide and I thought, this means that my future's in New Zealand. And absolutely, I got a job at Van Ash, as an NZSL tutor. Remember, that's when we met? I do remember that. I do. Yeah, so that was 2014. Yeah, and I remember meeting you there. Yeah, and that's where absolutely where I first met you, at that job. Yeah, as a tutor. Yeah, so... Yeah, that 5-leaf clover, I saw that as fortuitous and I got the job there and I'm still here today. So you worked as an NZSL tutor. Well, really, I applied for the tutor job, but really, I felt like it was a bit risky in some ways because, it wasn't my first language, New Zealand Sign Language. But the person said that they could see that I had the skills and I had the expression, and I'd only been in New Zealand 10 months, quite a short time, and I thought, I wanted to really honour the native users of the language, that they should be tutors. And I said, look, I'm happy to do something else like residence or design or some other kind of work. But they said, no, we need tutors. Plus also we need second language kind of tutors because you all understand second language learners. So I thought, okay then, let's see how we go. in the interview. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. So I went through with that application. I didn't feel completely right, but I went through with it anyway, and I got the job. And it's like I had to move from Blenheim to Christchurch because that's where the job was. So I moved down to Christchurch, and I was really nervous teaching because I got asked a lot of questions about New Zealand history and about how sign language started and all these different things that I had no idea of the answers to. But I thought, okay, I'll find out the answer to that and I'll let you know tomorrow. So I'd go and I'd research and I'd ask questions, and then I'd come back and I'd continue on. So that kind of was related a little bit to the way that you had to really learn on your own with the design work. Yeah, research was important for my growth, absolutely. So that's why I had to keep on doing that, about the language and New Zealand history and the variation and yeah. And, it was also like a bit of homework for me as well with my own learning. So I did that for 5 years. Wow. At the same time, I'm thinking about this because you were feeling quite positive, right? Because you obviously had the Hong Kong sign language growing up and used to sign with friends and your sisters. So you kind of already had that language, that sign language ability. And so it made it easier to kind of translate into NZSL. Yes and no. Like, yes, I had the grammar side of things, in terms of the word order, and I had the facial expressions and things like that with similar concepts, yes, but definitely not the alphabet. Oh, yeah, so what's it like in Hong Kong? Well, mate, it's normally one-handed, similar to American alphabet, but, this two-handed alphabet, I thought there was no kind of link to the visual, like what it looked like. I just had to, try and remember, I thought, oh yeah, that's the vowels. And, it was a constantly trying to remember. It was really hard, but I learned over time because I thought two hands. Yes, deaf people, we use both of our hands. So that makes sense. And, I thought, that one-handed, a different way of doing things and different perspectives, I suppose. Pros and cons to both. But, yep, I was able to learn NZSL as well. Right, so then your next job after that. So after NZSL tutor for 5 years, at that time I was really, really still keen within me. I had that artistic flair. Yes. And also I had video skills as well. So luckily I met Andrew. He had arrived back from Japan. He'd had 11 years over there and arrived back in New Zealand. And, I met him and I thought, what's he doing? And he was working with Paul Buzzard and Anita Boone and that team of filming and creating New Zealand Sign Language videos and sending them out. And I thought, oh, I could do that. Previous to that, there was a hearing designer, and I was like, oh, there's a hearing person in the design role, and they were great at that job. But sometimes I thought they didn't really understand deaf culture and language and, facial expressions and things. And I thought I could do that job, but how do I get it? Because that job's already filled. So, I said to Andrew, I was like, I had that video work and I hadn't kind of done it for a while. I thought, but I still got the skills. I said, I can do this. I've got some skills there. So, why not set something up there, and we can create more resources, more videos. I can do it. And he thought about it. He'd been studying linguistics and, he'd finished that. And then somehow he came to me and he said, yes, we can make a start on this. Let's do it, in terms of video creation. And so I was in. So I joined the team. So I did a bit of tutor work at the same time as doing the video creation work. And that grew. And then that job became full-time. So I could focus on, filming and editing and putting things together and poems and all kinds of things really, and filming myself. And yeah, so we really needed to develop that and resources for deaf people and visual. And, all of that was a real need just to grow that space. So I think I made videos for about 4 years. But I still had this kind of this inkling to get into the other side of things, the digital design, that the hearing person still had the job. And I had to be really patient. But luckily, with the merger of, the Aotearoa merger in 2020, it meant that there was a structure change. And so roles were shifting and, so there was a change happening in that role. And I thought, right, that job's going to be available now, and because that person was stepping into something else. But I thought, I just want to have a look at what, it is. And we in the team that I worked closely with the digital design team. And I thought, I watched them do the job and I thought, I can actually do this. There was a couple hearing people in the job. And after a year or two, they left. And I thought, right, they advertised it. I applied for that digital designer role. And I thought, I can do this. And I got the job as a digital designer. And I've been doing that for 4 years now. Yeah, so that was really good. I mean, I was quite rusty though, because it had been some time, like had it been 10 years and everything had changed so much. The software, like the InDesign program, it was Dreamwave. It had changed to that, become a thing of the past, and, animations and After Effects, and, there were all these changes happening and I had to learn them. So I did, and it was kind of like, going back to school, having to start from scratch. But now I've got total confidence. And it was easy because you had that foundation, didn't you, from school? So that really helped you. Yes, it did. So I already knew the basics, of those different programs and kind of how they worked, I guess, in terms of the system. And I just had to kind of link them together. It didn't matter. It was a new way of doing things, but there were some similarities there still. So, yeah, I learnt the ropes, and I would learn like animation, and for logos and different things. And yeah, so I learnt all of it. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Part 2 is coming soon.